with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to another edition of Backfire with Franklin Chansey, John Stanberry, and myself, Steve Doball Hickson. And let me introduce our chief engineer. Okay, I won't.
Ask and you shall receive.
We don't take long on subjects here. Daniel Brantley, our chief engineer. Yeah, give yourself an applause there. Let's just talk about something simple, like what did you think about the debate last night?
I thought that Mike Pence did a nice job of starting his 2020 presidential campaign. I thought stylistically he won the debate. The first half of the debate, I thought he kind of controlled the pace of it, and I thought Tim Kaine made a mistake being as aggressive and interrupting him as much as he did. I think it doesn't work well. It didn't work for Donald Trump. It didn't work last night for him. The second half of the debate, I think, which is a less important part because first impressions count, Kaine was more effective at getting Pence on the defensive about Donald Trump's comments and record. But all in all, I would say that I'd have to give Pence pretty good marks for his performance in the debate. And I don't agree with him, but from a debate performance, I thought he did pretty well. Wouldn't surprise me if the polls come out and show that he wins the debate by 4, 5, 6 points, something like that.
Well, Frank Luntz had a poll or a focus group watching it, and they were actually weighted heavier with Clinton people. And there were 22 of the group that thought Pence won, and there were 2 that thought Hillary won.
Okay. You know,
which is a wider margin than the week before.
When it was 17 out of 20.
It's a wider margin than people who thought Hillary won.
Well, and you know, and I think John would agree with me that you know, ultimately vice presidential debates don't tend to have a whole lot of effect on the race. So even if I concede that point to him, I wouldn't expect it to change things dramatically. I think, in truth, Trump has one more shot to make a significantly better impression in the next debate. If that doesn't happen, then I think the die will kind of be cast.
I'm not sure anybody knows what the dies even are in this election. You know, everybody has said that about Mr. Trump for 18 months now.
Well,
and every time it's been said, they've all been proven wrong.
The die is that in 11 of the 14 battleground states, she's polling ahead.
Yeah, but the polling did the same thing in the primary, and he continued to win.
He continued to poll high.
I think one of the things these polls don't take into account, I just listened to a former employee of Senator Kaine, lifelong Democrat, has run Democratic campaigns, who's running the Trumpocrats. And he said he thinks the world of Senator Kaine, but he can't abide by Hillary Clinton and the insider backroom wheeling and dealing that she has gone from dead broke to worth $250 million. And that's what's wrong with America right now. It's the insider wheeling and dealing, crony capitalism.
Well, I'm going to say one thing about the debate last night. Then I've got something I want you to put your ear sets on, and we're going to play. But Kaine he came across as a jerk, I think, last night.
I think he was ordered to be a jerk.
He was his zingers, but his zingers will be quoted in every paper, and I guess that's what matters to the Democrats. They don't care what they look like as long as they can get their jerky comments out. All right.
Okay.
Let's I've got something I want to play. It's going to take a few minutes, but I want you to listen to this. And I want to say this is exactly how I feel about this election.
By the silent majority. Millions of Trump supporters feel this way about Donald J. Trump. We don't care if the guy swears or how many times he's been married or who he voted for or what his income tax returns shows. We want the problems fixed. Yes, he's an egomaniac, but we don't care. We know he's not a racist or bad to women or all the other things the liberal media is trying to label him with. We know he's raised a good family, and that says a lot about him. The country is a mess because politicians suck, the Republican Party is two-faced and gutless, and illegals are everywhere, and Muslims are openly trying to hurt this country and make the civilized world adjust to them. We want it all fixed. We don't care that Trump is crude. We don't care that he has changed positions. We don't care that he fights with Megyn Kelly, Rosie O'Donnell, and so many of the elected establishment. We don't care that Rubio, Cruz, Ryan, and the Bushes, and so many other top old and new Republicans refuse to endorse him for their own selfish reasons, and we know what they are. We don't care that he doesn't know the name of some Muslim terrorist. We don't care that he tried some businesses that didn't work out. This country is weak, bankrupt. Our enemies are making fun of us. We are being invaded by illegals. We are becoming a nation of victims, where every Tom, Ricardo, and Hasid is a special group with special rights, to a point where we don't even recognize the country we are born and raised in, and we just want it fixed. And Trump is the only guy who seems to understand what the people want. We are sick of politicians, sick of the Democratic and Republican parties. We are angry about the Iran deal, the budget, treatment of Israel, military weakness, lobbyists, special interests, overpaid politicians with their self-serving bills and backroom deals, trade deals, loss of jobs, manipulated economic numbers, businesses fleeing, and even the phony pay-for-play Clinton Foundation. Americans are no longer going to be fooled, and the movement is out to change the direction we're taking. Trump may not be a saint, but he doesn't have lobbyist money holding him. He doesn't have political correctness restraining him. And all you know is that he's been very successful, a good negotiator. He's built a lot of things. He's flexible, and he's also not a politician. And he says he'll fix it. And we believe him because he is too much of an egotist to be proven wrong or looked at and called a liar. Public service has become elected greed. This may be our only chance to have a non-politician, despite his flaws, try and correct the mess, at least for 4 years. We must take the shot, because the consequences of putting Hillary Clinton in office are frightening. There's a tidal wave happening, and it's going to overcome much of what's happened to this country.
All right. Now then, did any of that make any sense?
Who are you asking first?
I'll ask you.
Do I think that there is a significant group of people in America who feel like their voices aren't being heard? Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
Okay.
Do I think that Donald Trump is even remotely a vessel for solving those problems? I absolutely do not. And that's not an ideological thing. I don't think he is competent to be president of the United States. And I will take competence, no matter who the president is or which party he comes from, over what I've seen thus far from Mr. Trump.
You mean the kind of competence that Hillary Clinton, who her own supporters, her own Democratic National Committee chairman, wasn't able to name a single accomplishment she had done?
Well,
that kind of competence. You mean the competence who doesn't know that the C on a internal email means confidential or classified? The woman who actually testified, she really didn't understand how the classification system works when she was the ranking official in charge of the classification system. That kind of competence, Franklin, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, John,
that kind of competence.
Yes, John, I am.
So I'm going to be your leader, but I don't know what the classification system means or how it works, and that shows her competence.
Are you done now?
Sure, Franklin.
Okay. Then I will take the same position that the Arizona Republican newspaper took for the first time in 125 years, the position that the Republican newspaper in Cincinnati took for the first time in 100 years, and a whole host of other Republican publications who simply said that while they may disagree with her, she is competent, and that your candidate is not. Or the position that USA Today took, who said, I don't care if you vote for Clinton or not,
well, Franklin,
but whatever
here's
you
your
do,
problem.
don't vote for Trump
The
because he's not competent.
You don't think lying
statement-
Hillary has any problem?
The very
I didn't say any
statement
such
that you're
thing.
talking about, Franklin, you now quote the very people that are part of the establishment that the vast majority of
first
Americans
of all,
don't
John,
trust
let's be
anymore.
absolutely clear that you are part of the establishment, okay?
Actually,
so it's
Franklin,
really,
I've always
it's
kind
really,
of been
it's
on
really
the fringes.
refreshing. It's
I've really
refreshing
always
to
been
hear
on
you
the
do that.
fringes, Franklin. I've always been someone that's been critical of anybody that screws up, whether it's Republican or Democrat.
It's
You, on
refreshing
the other
to hear
hand,
you as an
tote the
anti-establishment
You, on the other
candidate.
hand, well, I've always been anti-establishment. I understand you have to have an establishment, but that doesn't mean I like it. And it doesn't mean that there are times when it overblows. And it is, at this point, overgrown and overblown. We have all the media people falling into line. For example, the Miss USA or Miss Universe pageant stories last week. Those were in the can, ready to go on Tuesday morning, fully researched, fully quoted by all the major media outlets. So all Hillary had to do was drop that word, and the next morning they all hit the airwaves. Franklin, that's coercion. That's working together. You've got a media establishment that's supposed to be a fifth rail and a protector for our country and our culture, and they are in bed with one of the major parties and doing the legwork of the Democratic Party, and especially of Hillary Clinton. So if you're comfortable with the media no longer being a policing organization over the wrongs of both parties, then feel free. Accept your place that will be relegated to you to sit down, shut up, and do what the establishment people tell you to do.
I've been paying attention for 30 years, and you would have to have your head up an ostrich's rear end to take the position that the media has been kind to the Clintons over the years.
You're right, and that's what makes it worse, frankly, because the Clintons are such egregious felons and violators of all kinds of law and protocol. You're right. The media has really stumped to an all-time low to support someone like them.
This is simply round two in your salvo of trying to delegitimize another president.
She's
That's
not.
exactly
first
what's
off,
going.
Franklin,
Oh, she's going to be.
She's not president, and
she's
secondly,
going to be.
I
And
don't
guess
have
what?
to
She's going to be
delegitimize her.
your
she
president.
Delegitimizes
What is she
herself.
going to do with the deplorable voters that
the
didn't vote for her?
51% who are, quote, irredeemable, according to her.
Which, as she did the next day, something your candidate wouldn't recognize, she stepped up and said, I shouldn't have
She
said
didn't
that.
apologize for
Yes,
it.
she
She
did.
just said I shouldn't have said it.
Your
By the way,
candidate hasn't
what about-
apologized for anything in his lifetime.
Is she a Christian?
Well, I wouldn't know. I'd have to.
I'm just asking you, does she propose that she's a Christian?
Well, she says she's a
Is
Methodist.
Tim Kaine a Christian?
Yes.
What does the word irredeemable mean in the Christian faith?
Well, I suppose it means beyond redemption.
Is anyone under the Christian faith beyond redemption?
Presumably not, John.
Well, then your candidate, in
Okay,
a
John.
supposed slip of the tongue,
John, I am
violated the
perfectly
very
happy.
essence of Christianity
I am
in her statement.
perfectly happy for this debate to take place on theological grounds with your candidate.
Fine.
That'll be fine.
Fine, and let's discuss how she treated the victims of Bill's sexual predatory history. How'd she treat them, Franklin?
How about the way Trump treats his own victims?
Look, I'm not disagreeing. He's a
Okay.
vulgar person at times, but guess what? He's never actually assaulted one. He's certainly not attacked the victim as Hillary did.
Well,
the questions here are not what Bill did.
It was interesting to watch your Republican candidate in New Hampshire try desperately to get out of the idea that she would want her children to be like Donald Trump.
Well, look, Franklin,
That says all you need to know.
I'm not disagreeing that Trump is vulgar at times, and I think
Vulgar?
he says inappropriate things. But guess what? Your candidate does vulgar things. She hired private detectives to smear and destroy any woman that Bill had actually victimized. So all the women out there that think she's the best candidate, make sure you talk to Bill's victims about Hillary and how she treated them.
Well, I suppose everything's relative, John, and with that relativity, I'm fairly certain that she's going to do much better with women than
I'm
Donald
sure
Trump
she
will.
will, because as we started this conversation,
Because you
she
think
has a client media
because you
covering
think
up for her.
women don't have brains of their own
Covering
and
up
can't do
for
that.
her. No, I think that if they knew that she called his victims rodeo queens and hired a private detective to assign them and attack them and literally destroy her own
Destroy
aide
them.
said that she said we have to destroy these women's stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's George Stephanopoulos in his book. Read his book.
Okay,
He
will.
assigned that comment to Hillary Clinton. And she was in charge of the operation.
John,
so all the women out there,
when
please
you
feel
have-
free to vote for the woman who sees you as a victim or sees you as the enemy if you're in her way.
John, when you have the same standard for your candidate that you try to impose on
There's
the
a
other
difference
side, no,
between
there's not a
saying
difference.
something and doing something. You're right. I agreed with you. He has said some things he shouldn't have
he's
said.
done far
she
more
has
than that.
attacked people and destroyed
He's
them.
done far more than
Attacked
that.
and destroyed. On top of the fact that she's taken tens of millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia that doesn't allow women to drive, doesn't allow them to vote, and kills them if they do anything wrong. By the way, if you're a victim of rape in Saudi Arabia, you're the actual bad guy, and they stone you to death under Sharia law. And she took tens of millions of dollars from that country, Franklin, and yet she claims to care about women.
Okay. Well, what I know is she's actively worked to improve the standing
As
of
long as
women
they
of-
weren't in her way.
Franklin, excuse me. Let me ask you, why was her staff granted immunity during the investigation?
It's a common thing that
Is
prosecutors
it common
do.
to destroy the evidence after the fact?
Don't know the answer to that one.
It's not common. That's
Do you
why you
think
don't
the
know
case-
the answer.
I mean, you're an attorney.
Although the evidence that they had and that was destroyed had already been copied out.
Well,
So it's
actually,
not
we don't
really
know. They
relevant.
won't even admit whether it's been
Well,
destroyed
that's what
or
the
not.
FBI says.
Well, the Congressional Committee asked, have they been destroyed, and got no answer. So we don't even know.
That's what the FBI said, that they had copied the information out. So whether the computer was then destroyed is irrelevant.
Well, Franklin, if you represented someone who had been wronged by someone else and the police investigated it and you had any question at all about the investigation and they immediately destroyed the evidence at the supposed perpetrator's request, would you as a defense attorney feel good about that? That your
After
evidence
the
was now gone?
investigation was complete,
No, if you have, but as the attorney for
the evidence isn't gone.
you're right, but Franklin,
That's the
there
point,
can be
John.
other crimes
The
here,
evidence-
but the evidence has been destroyed.
John, y'all have spent 30 years trying to find
Well,
a
first off,
crime that
we know
Hillary Clinton
Cheryl Mills
committed,
lied to the
and
FBI.
you didn't succeed one
we know
time.
multiple crimes were committed
So
here.
she's either the greatest criminal mastermind in history, or this is a bunch
Well,
of
I'm
malarkey.
going to ask you what I asked you
and I'm
weeks ago,
betting
Franklin.
on the malarkey.
Did any of the lawyers have security clearance?
No.
Any of the lawyers that went through the emails, did they have security clearance?
No.
That's a violation of federal law.
Well,
That's a
according-
crime.
well-
no, according to everybody, it's a violation of federal law to give security
Let's stop
classified
and think
information
about
to
this. Let's
people
stop
without
and think
clearance.
about this for a minute, John.
Franklin,
Let me. Are you
Hillary
going to let
Clinton-
me
No,
answer your
because
question?
she violated
Okay.
the law, and you know it.
All right, here's the facts, not that you care about them, but exactly how many private lawyers out there have a security clearance, John?
Well, I don't know, Franklin.
That's right.
How many times
Because
has a government
by
official
definition,
taken
they're not gonna
how
have
many
it.
times has a government official moved her entire operation off of secure government control into a bathroom server in a Denver apartment? How many times has that happened,
A
Franklin?
Denver apartment.
Yeah, the Platte River Works had the damn server in the bathroom of a small apartment. Now that's on top of the server that was in the basement of her unsecured home.
Well, I've read a pretty good analysis of the security that was in that, and was actually, it turns out, better than the State Department's. So go figure.
Look, Comey, in announcing that he wouldn't prosecute her, also in his testimony said anyone else who did this probably would have been prosecuted. That right there is all the public needs to hear, Franklin. She is above the law, and you're defending
Well, why
someone
did
being
this
above the law.
Republican do that then, John, if that's the case?
Well, one story is that the Hoover building is crumbling and going to have to be torn down, and that if it's
They're gonna name the
rebuilt,
building after
Comey
it.
wants his name on the side of the building.
Of course it will.
There's a new book out, Guilty of Sin. It's all
Well,
about
look,
the
Franklin,
Clintons.
if you want to laugh about that,
John,
one of
I'm
Hillary's,
not laughing about
one of
anything.
Hillary's,
Here's what I'm telling
one
you.
of Hillary-
We sat in here for a year and a half talking about this email thing,
Mm-hmm.
and for a year and a half, I said I thought it was horrible judgment, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what the crime was supposed to be. And lo and behold, the Republican head of the FBI, who led the investigation, gets up in front of Congress, testifies under oath, and says, I think it was terrible judgment. She made mistakes, but this isn't a crime that
but
should
he
be
said
prosecuted.
anyone else doing it would be probably committing a
So-
crime.
Let's
he admitted
let's get
that
this
she
straight.
had a second standard.
Let's get this straight. Do you think that President Obama and her were emailing each other on these servers?
I saw an analysis. They said they found 4 or 5 emails out of 30,000 between her and the president.
Well, let me ask a question. Did the president go on the news just last spring and say the first time he found out about a private server was when he read it in the news?
Yes.
Was he emailing her using a pseudonym before that point?
I don't know.
Yes, he was. We found the emails, and you just admitted that there were 4 or 5 emails. Yet he went on record to the American
I didn't admit
public,
anything. I
Franklin,
reported what's out
what the
there.
president said. That you said 4 or 5 emails.
What is your point, John?
He lied to the American people.
How is that a lie?
Franklin, he went on the air and said the first time I found out about the private server was when I read about it in the news.
How would sending
and
an email tell you that there's a
because
private server?
Because it has the header on it, Franklin. He's the president of the United States, and his people would not overlook something like that. Matter of fact, all he had to do is look at it. It says it on the email.
It doesn't say there's a private server in your basement.
It doesn't say gov. You know, .gov. It didn't have .gov in the address, Franklin. So unless you're now going to claim the president is too incompetent to understand
John,
that,
are facts, not your
that the
theories.
president's too incompetent to recognize a private server, and yet he's competent enough to have all of our hands in his life, our lives in his hands. Great, Franklin. I feel so much better about him.
I can't understand why all these people that testified had to plead the fifth.
Why do you have to have immunity or plead the fifth if you didn't do anything wrong?
Because it's a long-time Washington game to try and squeeze everybody they can and to make their lives miserable,
Franklin,
wreck them financially.
Have you ever worked as a prosecutor, or have you always been defense?
I've always been defense.
All right. Just if you could imagine yourself a prosecutor, if there are 5 people suspected of committing a crime and you're investigating those 5 people, would it make sense to give all 5 of them immunity?
Okay, John.
Well, are you going to prosecute anybody if all 5 of your suspects have immunity?
Did Hillary Clinton get immunity?
No.
So all the
everybody who could
suspects
have
didn't
proved
get
anything
immunity,
on
did
her
they?
got immunity, which means they didn't tell them anything, and then we let her go. And the American people see that and understand it.
I think what the problem is, John, it would draw Obama in, and there would be a real problem then.
Okay.
But I mean, I can't imagine why everybody gets the fifth here. It's a crooked setup, Franklin. Admit it. It's crooked. Do you not think there's something wrong with that?
No.
You don't.
No.
You deal in law every day, and you
That's
don't
right.
think something's wrong.
That's
with
right.
Everybody that could be involved in
commit
this,
the crime.
Commit the crime. Be
What
involved
crime?
In it.
Well, that's what the
There was no
investigation.
crime.
Well, first
That's
off,
the
Franklin,
problem
there are multiple
here.
crimes. We know that several of them lied. We know that Cheryl Mills shouldn't have had the information because she didn't have the proper security clearance. We know that she brought other lawyers and assistants in which didn't have security. We have people in prison right now for doing exactly the same thing, Franklin. What do you say to those people? You're a defense attorney.
What
do
ordered
you say
this?
to them?
Who
Ordered
ordered?
what?
Who ordered the computers?
Who ordered them to wipe the emails?
Yeah. Who ordered it?
Now, Hillary said
Which part are you
Franklin,
talking about?
Hillary said she turned all her emails over, and yet we now have found 30,000 that weren't turned over. Is that a crime? She testified under oath that all the emails were turned over, and now we find 30,000 who were wiped. Matter of fact, there was 1,000 emails between her and General Petraeus that she didn't turn over. Were those about yoga class?
Don't know.
As she said the only ones they deleted were yoga class. You're telling me she talked to General Petraeus 1,000 emails worth, and all of that was about yoga?
What we're talking about here, John,
is a liar.
Are emails that were already on the Department of State's server that had already been forwarded to them, which is the part that they don't like to talk about.
We found them afterwards, so you're wrong. And Hillary didn't give them to them. They found them on other people's. Hillary had deleted them.
Exactly.
Which is
They're
illegal.
already there.
Deleting business email, official government email, is illegal, Franklin.
Not when it's been sent to somebody in the Department of State.
So in other words, that operative rule in the State Department, which she made everyone else sign, if you send it to 5 people, 4 of the 5 people could delete it as long as the one other person kept it. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
If it's sent into the State Department system, it gets automatically archived.
No, it didn't. Actually, they weren't automatically archiving. Folks, what you're hearing him tell you is the rules are for you, not for Hillary and the elite. That's what he's telling
What you're hearing, folks, is the increasing desperation.
There's a Marine
from the
going to
Republican
prison as
Party,
we speak for doing
who
exactly
did not
what
do
Hillary,
exactly the same thing. Not
what
even
Hillary
close,
did.
John. Not even close.
Here's what he did, Franklin. He took a report and sent it to another Marine in Afghanistan because he was concerned for their safety. And it turned out he was actually right. There was an imminent attack coming, and we prosecuted him for that because he had sent that email, classified email, illegally, supposing. Now, he sent it to a guy, one of our own service people, to save his life, to save their lives, and we sent him to prison. Hillary does that with thousands of classified emails, and you actually defend the head State Department official in her comments that I didn't know how the classification system worked.
No, I didn't defend it.
Are
There you go
comfortable with the
again.
president who says,
There
"I don't
you
know"?
go again,
Well, when does
John.
she need to understand the classification system,
What
Franklin?
I said-
Before inauguration or after?
Well,
That doesn't make sense.
well, because
she be
because
given a tutorial?
no, the facts are so far different from what John just
I
said
went on your own fact
that it
that
would
she-
take hours to
Did
explain
she
it to
testify
him.
did she testify to the FBI that she didn't understand the classification system?
Yes,
How long has she been in government, Franklin?
the reason.
How
for
long
that
has she been in government, Franklin?
in government since 2001?
And she was a senator, right? And she was on the Foreign
She was 8
Intelligence
years
Committee, right?
there for 8
And
years.
how long had she served as Secretary of State?
4 years.
So her entire tenure is 4 years. She never learned how the classification system worked. Here's your choice, Franklin. She's either lying about not understanding the classification system or she's totally incompetent. Which do you choose?
The classification that you're referring to is not top secret or anything
She
like
said,
that.
I'm talking to you about her comment that she didn't understand how the classification system
What
worked.
actually happened here?
Did she say, I don't
What
understand
actually happened here is
Yes.
that inside an email in one paragraph next to one of these messages, there was a tiny C.
that? No, at the top of the page on
No,
multiple
it was
ones.
not.
Franklin,
That's where
just
you're
not
wrong.
True. And on
Does
top
it
of-
really matter how
Yes,
big
it
the
does.
No, wait a minute. Does it really matter how
Yes,
big
it does.
the C is or
Franklin,
where it is?
what-
Should she have known?
What's the title
Should
of
she
the
have
top
known?
person at the State
The
Department?
other part of it is she wasn't sending that email outside the government.
Franklin?
She sent it into the
Franklin,
government.
What is the title of the top person at the State Department?
The Secretary of State, John.
Did she hold that title?
Yes, John.
Did she testify to the FBI after serving 4 years as the top person at the State Department that she didn't understand how the classification system worked? Did
that
she?
particular part? She
Do
certainly
you
did.
find that a competent individual?
I think that was not good.
Not good,
Not
folks.
good, but
Now,
she's
she's
okay.
the leading, ranking
John,
diplomat.
You've had a wonderful
doesn't
time this
understand
morning.
how the. I
leveling
just
this,
said it.
and no, this is the fact because
You're
it goes
going to
back to this
vote for
debate.
someone like that?
No, I'm not going to vote
you're
for
not gonna vote for
somebody
her?
who's totally incompetent.
She's totally
No,
incompetent by her
not
own
even
testimony
close,
to the
John.
FBI, Franklin.
And you know it.
Do you
no,
think
there's a reason you're
understanding the
doing this
classification
because
system-
you can't
Can I-
stand the thought
can-
of defending
No,
Donald
I
Trump.
can't stand the thought
That's
of
right.
risking our country
You
with
can't
Hillary
stand
Clinton.
the thought of even beginning to defend your candidate. He turns your stomach. He's everything the opposite of what you claim to be for the last 30 years.
Franklin.
And you're going to walk into that voting booth and you're going to pull the lever for him because you're putting party over country.
He knows.
because
He
it's
knows
a
the
That's
best.
what's
He knows,
happening.
he knows the
Binary
best
choice,
of two
Franklin.
evils.
That's what's happening.
It's a binary
It's
choice.
party
And I
over
am-
country.
You're right. It's a binary
party
choice.
over
No,
country.
Franklin.
That's
It's a
exactly
binary
right.
choice.
And all these other Republicans out there, establishment people, now you call them, who are saying that your candidate is totally not only incompetent, inept, and immoral. You're going to say, "Oh, they're just part of the
So
establishment."
Tim Kaine's former assistant, who was on the news this
You-
morning, saying
like I
that
said,
she was
you
totally
won't talk
incompetent
about
and immoral.
your candidates.
Look, Franklin, it's the lesser of two evils. I've always said that, but she's the worst of the bunch. By her
can
own, I
convince
mean,
yourself
think
if you
about
want.
that. She testified to her own incompetence in order to cover her butt.
and
you're
Donald
willing to accept
testifies
that.
every day.
She
On Twitter,
testified
primarily.
under oath. Of course, her husband testified under oath, slandered a woman, and actually committed perjury, but you don't apparently have a problem with that either.
Have I mentioned that we have a guest today, John?
I knew we had a
We're
guy.
going to introduce her to the second half.
All right.
Do you know what the definition of it is?
I know what my definition is.
You can ask Bill Clinton. Now that I've got something, let's hear something before we take a break. We're going to listen to something, and we'll be right back.
Insurance company, and they're getting whacked. So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world. So here...
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, I'm the doctor.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music. WOOP FM wants to know, what do you really think about us? Call and leave us a message at 614-5553, and we'll play it on the air. Love us? Hate us? Let us know. 614-5553.
Check into Cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
After 135 years, Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest since 1880, has delivered on our commitment to produce the finest navy blazer in America. This limited edition blazer was announced as the style winner in Garden and Guns Made in the South Awards. Crafted in Cleveland, Tennessee, we use premium Italian wool from the Tale Barbarus, custom Bimberg lining, and signature gold buttons. It's available through the finest men's stores or at hardwick.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
Train engineers put our heating and cooling products for almost every test imaginable. So while you're sending your kids to school, they're sending 10,000 volts through a compressor. Testing like this is the reason Train is so reliable, and why our engineers prefer their steaks. Well done.
Ready to indulge in Train comfort? Call a Train comfort specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
This is Teresa Gilbert from the Village Bake Shop in Cleveland, Tennessee. Do you have a birthday, wedding, or anniversary coming up and want that perfect cake? Need some donuts to sweeten up your coworkers? Want to surprise your sweet thing with a bag of cookies? Then come on over to the Village Bake Shop. Family operated since 1961, the Village Bake Shop is your first and last stop for fresh baked goods that will feed your sweet tooth. The Village Bake Shop located at the Village Green Town Center. The phone number here is 423-476-5179. See you soon.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper. Family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right. Every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back in the studio again. We've got a guest. Franklin, you brought a guest with you this morning. Would you like to introduce her?
I did. We have Christy Wilkinson, who is the candidate for state senate in Tennessee. She's running against the incumbent Todd Gardenhire. She is a mom of two from Chattanooga. She was a adjunct professor at UTC for many years in the philosophy department. And we thought we'd give her an opportunity to tell us about herself today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Can I ask you to hold on just a moment? We've got a call.
Sure.
Oh, we need to take a call. Yeah. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I was going to say something. I guess I better not say it since you got a guest there. But
Now, you can say anything you want to. This is an open mic here.
okay, well, this your Franklin guy. Seems to me like you only need to take him back to the insane asylum. He's completely nuts.
Is that all you wanted to say?
Have you been talking to my wife again?
Thanks for calling, caller.
Listen, his therapist thinks it's good for him to get out some. So.
Yeah. Christy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live in Chattanooga in a little neighborhood called Highland Park, which is right outside of the downtown area. It's one of the more socioeconomically diverse neighborhoods in the city.
They have many shootings there?
We haven't had any in recent history that I can think of, but we had a little, about a couple of years ago, we had a spat of about 3 or 4 in the span of a month or 6 weeks or so.
Okay. What do you think we need to do about the problem in Chattanooga with all the shootings?
Well, I think that we need to take a holistic approach to making society a better place. We've got to make sure that people actually have options in their lives besides criminal activity.
In other words, let them have jobs?
Jobs, better education, vocational training, all kinds of, I think,
Do you think it would be hard to find a job today if you wanted one?
Yes, I do.
You think nobody's hiring?
I'll just tell you a little personal story. So I taught for 5 years at UTC, and as an adjunct instructor, I taught Western Humanities classes. I have about 10 years of college teaching experience under my belt, a master's degree in philosophy. When the university downsized the philosophy and religion department and cut their entire adjunct budget, I spent about 6 months applying for numerous jobs in all different kinds of fields, and only got maybe a couple of calls back and never got hired. Teaching experience is one of those things that is easily translatable to a lot of different areas, but nevertheless, it was still very difficult to try to find gainful employment that paid the kind of wages that I would have had to earn in order to be able to put my kids into full-time childcare. So I think that it's a balancing act when you're trying to find a job, and it's not easy for everyone to find something that they're going to be able to support their families on.
I've got a friend that has a company. He bought a company, and he's been trying to hire employees, and he can't find enough employees.
Yeah, so we have that problem too.
Well, his problem is they make too much over here drawing.
What do you mean?
Well, they get, Social they get
2 years ago, the average tax-paying American made $42,200 a year. The average government dependent made $42,800. So the average government dependent actually made more than the average taxpayer. People don't want to work if you can actually not work and get paid more from the government off the backs of other people.
I'm really curious about where your information came from.
Well, that's I'll be honest with you, that's out of my memory from about 2 years ago, but it was a report by one of the foundations that crunched the numbers.
So you're saying that folks on
when you added up
government
the total
assistance?
value,
Okay.
when you added up, when you talk about housing and food stamps and all the different programs, if you added the total value up, it came to more than the average taxpayer
And
earned.
those numbers are skewed by the fact that you have significant urban areas, particularly in the Northeast, where the housing voucher by itself is worth $25,000.
Skewed all
No,
you want.
no,
Point
it is.
When you've got people can earn more on, and some of this, I will tell you,
earn more not working.
I'm not
they can
against
work.
some of the programs. I'm against the way some of the programs are actually done. For example, the programs pay a single mother, and that has been a huge pusher in pushing the black father out of the black family. Because what they did is, if the black father stays in the household, and if he gets married, especially, they actually lose benefits. So we have government policy that encourages a poverty situation, because most people know the lack of a father in a household is one of the key determinants to a life of crime.
I really think that we are facing some other issues kind of on the other side of the coin. Like we've got large companies, very large corporations that pay their employees very little, and they can really, in fact, actually afford to pay their employees quite a bit more.
Based on what? Now, how do you make that determination?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take the example of Walmart, right? So the family that owns Walmart is one of the wealthiest families in the entire country. And they can definitely afford to pay their employees a living wage.
My point is, who
their
gives
profit
you the
margins are so
who gives
high.
you the right to make that distinction? Did you help build Walmart?
You know what?
Is it a right, or is it just a criticism?
I think that
No, she says that they can afford. My point is,
you know what? They're double dipping into the system.
well, if I look at you and say you can afford to get a different job outside of philosophy, do I have that right to make that distinction for you?
You might have the right to make the suggestion.
Well,
for
should
me.
I try to get the government to force you to do it?
I didn't hear anybody talk about forcing them to do it.
I assume that your solution is through tax policy to force Walmart to pay their employees more because you think they should.
It wouldn't be a tax policy. It would be a simple minimum wage.
So in other words, you're
increase.
okay with forcing them to. That's what a
Absolutely.
law
Absolutely.
is. Then can I pass a law to force you to do what I think you ought to do?
No, you cannot pass a law to make one individual
any
person
individual. I can pick
them do anything in particular.
And you need to be real careful about this, because what you're doing is you're setting a principle in place that government can force people to do what you think is right.
The government already thinks they can force people to do
and they
what
can't,
they
and
think
they
is
shouldn't
right.
be.
And they do
My
that all
point
the
is,
time.
you're okay with it as long as you agree with what they're forcing. But if I say
you know what, I'm okay with the government protecting workers. We live in a capitalistic society,
Mm-hmm.
and if workers are not capable of protecting themselves by organizing and collective bargaining, then it's the government's responsibility to protect those workers and make sure that we're not giving welfare to corporations that don't need
I'm
it, and
against
we're
that
not
too.
giving
I'm
welfare to
against that too.
individuals that don't need it.
I'm against that.
And so when
too.
you
Well,
have,
no, you're not against giving
so when you have large corporations that do not pay their workers a living wage that they
What's
can
a
live
living
off
wage?
of, at least $12 an hour. We live in a family of four.
Why
and
not
it's very
$15
difficult
an
for
hour?
$15.
Why not
I would
20?
take it.
Why not
30? I would take it. But
So in other
people
words,
like
there's
to
no
start
limit
lower.
to how much you would force a
It's
company
not.
to pay.
No, there is.
Well, what
a
happens
limit.
when that
there
company
absolutely
goes out of
is. But
business?
excuse me, because I'm speaking, and I actually have a point that I would like to finish making without being interrupted.
Go ahead.
So, when you have large corporations that do not pay their employees enough money, their employees have to go to the government, and the government has to subsidize not what the employee is not working for, but what the corporation is not compensating them for. They are working, they are doing a job, they are contributing to society, and the government has to go in and say, oh, now your employer doesn't pay you enough money, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you health care, we're going to give you a living stipend, we're going to help you with your housing housing. And so the government comes in and subsidizes what these large corporations do not pay their employees. And then when they get that assistance in terms of food assistance or cash assistance, they go right back and spend it at the Walmart that they work at. And that's not right.
Do you know what?
It's not
so
right.
Are you advocating that the government should be subsidizing all of this?
I'm advocating that corporations have a responsibility to pay employees so that they don't have to go to the government. I'm all about reducing the welfare rolls here.
Well, Bill
I would
Clinton
like to
reduced
see.
the
I
welfare
would like
rolls.
to
Were
see.
you happy with that?
I would like to see our corporations, our large companies, paying their employees a wage that they can actually live on.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to use a business, any business. Let's say the ice cream shop, Baskin and Robbins out here. Okay, ice cream shop. You own that. That's your business. Okay, you put $300,000-$400,000 into building this, starting this business, and so forth. You've got a couple employees that you've hired that are one of them's a retiree, and maybe a couple of kids that you've hired. How much are you supposed to pay them to dip ice cream?
How much?
I mean, you know what? As much as it, I think that people, I think that even if you're a retiree or a teenager, you deserve to be compensated fairly for your work.
You mentioned Walmart. What's Walmart's profit margin?
I'm not really sure what Walmart's profit margin is,
here-
but they are definitely one of the wealthiest
let me
corporations
stop for a
in
second.
the country.
That's one of our main problems. You're running for office, and you're espousing a point here on Walmart and that they should pay enough. But when I ask you what's their profit margin, you don't know.
Well, because we'd have to
It's
analyze their tax
3.5%.
returns.
It's 3.5 cents on the dollar.
Okay, I'm
3.5
sure that
cents on the dollar.
you.
And what does that translate to?
That's a lot
It
of
doesn't
pennies.
matter.
No,
See,
it
that's
does
what,
matter.
No, Franklin,
No,
I know
it
where
does
you're going
matter.
with this, and that's what you
It
all
does
do.
matter.
You change. People don't understand the difference
It
between
does
profit and profit margin. They make billions of dollars probably, but it's only 3.5 cents. 3.5 cents on the dollar. So if they make $500 billion, it costs them $499 billion to make it. So their margin is actually very low. For example, we fussed about health insurance. Average health insurance was 3 cents on the dollar. You know what the average beer distributor makes? 28 cents on the dollar. Did anybody fuss about beer distributors?
Here's what I know. I know that over the last 15 years, corporate profits have been at all-time highs. What I also know is wages have not
Franklin,
grown.
Profit is a dollar amount. Profit margin is
I didn't
your
say
percentage.
I didn't say profit margin.
I know,
said
that's my
profits.
point. You can't
No,
do what you're
I
doing.
can do it.
No,
I can
you'll
do it.
collapse the economy if you do that.
No, it won't collapse the economy. We have too many breaks that are given
All
to
the
American
cities that
corporations.
raise the minimum wage to $15 are seeing a net loss of workers. Jobs are
not
leaving.
even true.
Wendy's alone has announced they will put 6,000 kiosks in and get rid of all of the front desk checkout people.
Economy's
They're going to
booming.
automate all of their Wendy's.
Welcome to technological
Well,
advancement.
congratulations. Your
That's going to
$15
happen.
wage is
That's
what's
going
causing
to
that.
happen no matter
Well,
what. No
let me
matter
give you-
where wages are,
Denmark-
computers are going to start doing
Denmark-
the jobs of people.
Denmark is an incredibly progressive country. They had 5 years of unemployment benefits. The average time to find a job in Denmark was 5.2 years. They debated whether to cut it to 4 years, and all the social progressives said, if you do that, people will starve. They did it. The average time to find a job went to 4.2 years within months. Then they cut it to 2 years. The average time to find a job went to 2.2 years. So the longer you subsidize this, the longer people will live off of it. Now, I'm not saying we don't help people that are in trouble, but there has to be a balance. Bill Clinton actually cooperated with the Republican Congress in the 90s, did welfare reform, and millions of people moved off the rolls. But the social progressives have now attacked. Hillary's actually having to apologize for that legislation, which was really probably one of the most successful welfare reforms in history.
He also raised taxes on the wealthy.
His first 2
Apparently,
years,
that didn't kill the economy the way you claim it's going to.
well, JFK cut taxes and said it was the best way to stimulate the economy. So you need to argue with your,
And I know,
your stalwart,
I know you
John
and your
F.
family
Kennedy.
voted for him too. Right?
All right, I want to start all over. Christy, good morning. Welcome to
morning.
Whoop.
Christy,
Would
I argue with everybody. I love arguing. There's nothing.
Would you like to talk about the issues why don't you talk about the issues that you're most concerned with right now?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues that we're going to face,
and you're
that
running
we're
against
facing right
Todd
now.
Gardner.
That's right. I think one of the greatest issues that we're coming up on here is the education in the state of Tennessee, and particularly in the 10th Senate District in terms of the schools in Hamilton County.
Do you believe in a voucher system?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because I believe it's very important. I think the integrity of our public school systems is extremely important to the integrity of our society. And I see voucher programs as a type of disinvestment in our public schools.
Right. Can I just throw
I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, just from the little bit I know about you from here, that I imagine you probably have a lot to say.
Well, I just think that I think that poor children locked in failing neighborhoods have just as much right to go to better schools, private schools, if they choose, that wealthy people do.
Yeah.
So you're okay locking those poor children in.
You know what? I really think that is a kind of like, it's not really a fair argument in favor of vouchers. There's a lot of evidence that shows that those poor kids, they're not the ones that actually get the vouchers. It's really middle class families that get the vouchers. And those resources, it really is.
It wasn't in D.C.
What about New Orleans?
We're talking about Hamilton County. We're talking about Chattanooga.
Well, but D.C. is one of the biggest experiments in that. And it was highly successful and highly popular with the inner city neighborhoods.
That's awesome. I'm still going to vote against
the Democrats
vouchers.
killed the program and forced those people back into failing schools.
I mean, I think that public schools are key to the integrity of our society. A public education is a constitutional right. And if you start giving people the option to disinvest in public schools, they will do so. And that's not necessarily a good thing for our public schools. So then when the vouchers run out and there's not enough room left in the private schools for kids to go to, all those kids who got left behind at the public schools that there was a mass exodus from, in terms of kids taking vouchers to private schools, what kind of resources are left for those little ones that are left behind in the public schools? So if we just completely avoid that kind of situation and instead invest in the public schools, get those middle class families who want to send their kids to private school to stay in the public schools, to volunteer, to put in their time and effort.
Can I just add, how much more money do we need to spend in the private schools?
I know. You know what? I hear this all the time. How much more money
Well, I
do
mean,
we
how
need
much
to
does
spend?
it take?
Currently, Tennessee funds their per pupil program, right? Less than Kentucky does. Kentucky spends more every year on their students than the state of Tennessee. We are currently 47th in the nation.
So you think
for
money is
per
the
pupil
issue?
spending. I think that when the state comes up with really wonderful ideas about how to improve schools and how to make sure kids are getting the education that they need, they come up with these great mandates and these great ideas for what they're going to do, and then they don't put any money behind it. So yes, we need to fund our public schools a little
And
bit
that'll
more.
increase results.
I think that resources really help people.
Do you know what the highest per pupil funded system in the country is?
Do you?
Yes.
What is that?
It's D.C. It's the lowest performing. And we're also next to the top in the world, and yet we don't score anywhere near the top in results.
It's also, in terms of population, amongst one of the poorest
Look,
cities.
frankly, it's per capita spending.
That's not
It's
a good comparison.
It's per pupil spending.
It's also not all about spending. There
Well,
are
that's-
other.
we
there
agree
are
on
other,
that.
There
We
are
agree
other
on that.
things. So curriculum is a big part of that.
You're right.
And making sure. So it's partly making sure that teachers have what they need. It's partly making sure that students have what they need. It's also making sure that parents have what they need, especially in those single parent homes where you've got mom working a number of very low wage paying jobs to try to string something together so that she can put clothes on her kid's back and food on the table and make sure he's got something to eat when he gets home.
Do you know what I think the problem in school systems are? Families. I think a lot of the problem are families. John, did you come up in a public school system?
I did.
Did you have a problem with anything?
No, I had, a supportive family, but I think that's a cultural issue. And I'll tell you something we might agree on. Do you think that it's more important to spend money in the schools on bricks and mortar or in the classroom?
In the classroom.
See, that's the kind of thing that a conservative and a liberal could agree on. My problem, when we talk about spending, one of the reasons that I oppose increasing the spending in education right now is because I think the pie is being divided up poorly.
I agree.
And so if all you do is expand the size of the pie, that poor division will continue. We build these Taj Mahal public schools, and I don't mean that but I mean we spend a lot of money on terrazzo floors and on fancy facades on the front of it, but we don't put enough money in the classroom. I'd much rather, if we could get a conversation going between a Republican and a Democrat, a conservative and a liberal, and say, let's get some money in the classroom, let's support the teacher, and let's not worry so much about the fancy bricks and mortar. Then, if we do that, I might turn around and say, okay, now that I know the money's going into the classroom, maybe I would support more money.
I want to use one more example.
Franklin,
Franklin,
like your pie analogy.
did you come up in the public school system?
I did.
Did you have a problem with it?
Did I have a problem with it?
As a Democrat, did you have a problem in the public school system?
No, I didn't have a problem with it, but I will tell you that not everybody had the ability to have their parents there supporting them in school and coming to those parent-teacher conferences and so forth.
We agree to that.
Okay.
I agree.
So while I agree that family is a big factor in that, I mean, my folks were frequently working second shift and so forth. They weren't at those parent-teacher conferences, but I had some great teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one who's advocated in here for a long time that.
But the
yes,
system,
I do
system worked for you. It was successful for you. The system was successful for John.
Well, but lots of the people in my neighborhood, it wasn't successful for.
Why were the people in your neighborhood?
That's a good question. It's a fair question.
Was it family issues?
In some cases.
Most of what I've seen in our school system is a mama trying to raise a child without a daddy.
Well,
there's not.
The divorce rate was a lot lower when I was in public schools, but a lot of those people failed.
Yeah, but it actually, Franklin, that started in but prior to 1960, especially in the black community, the illegitimate birth rate was actually lower than the general community.
Well,
and it was the Great Society programs that actually pushed a lot of that onto society, and that has had a huge impact on these kids' ability to perform in schools because they don't have stable home environments.
So, my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. My mom lived on the west side of the state. My dad lived on the west side of the state. My mom lived on the east side of the state. And I went to 12 different elementary schools over those custody battles, bouncing back and forth between two homes. My mother suffers from occasional addiction issues. My father is extremely abusive, and my home life was not great growing up. By the time I got to junior high school, things got a little bit more stable. But I'll tell you what, I graduated in the bottom of my high school class. And I think a large part of that was because of an unstable home environment. When I got to college, I graduated summa cum laude from community college, magna cum laude from my undergraduate degree. I really believe that the home environment has a huge impact on the ability for a student to perform in school, in public schools. But again, if we're going to help these students, we are going to have to make sure that we're doing something about the family, making the family stronger. And the school environment has to be, as it was for me, a safe, loving, nurturing environment, even if my grades weren't that good.
You felt comfortable in school.
That's right. And I had teachers and guidance counselors who loved me and taught me that I was smart and that I could do it. I'm
involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and I see that all the time. And that's what makes some of those kids get through this. But I also see the problems that those kids have. They have a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And they need somebody they can depend on.
They sure do.
And it sounds like you found it in school.
I did.
We've taken up a lot of time that we were just going to get to know you.
Why don't we let her say something, and I will shut up and let her talk. Okay.
I think we've come to a conclusion there.
Let her say what she wants to say.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I've said it.
Well, I mean, in general, is there anything you want to say for
what's your important issues? Give us some issues you're running for.
Public education is the central focus of my platform. It's something that I believe firmly in. I think we also have to make sure that affordable health care is accessible for every Tennessean. And I think we need to build an economy that works for every single person in the state of Tennessee. It's time for equitable, it's time for equity. It's time for us to start living in a state that is competitive. I don't want to be in the bottom anymore. I want Tennessee to be the kind of place where my kids will go to college, raise their kids, and we can,
Is the University of Tennessee okay?
The University of Tennessee is wonderful.
Okay, I just want to check. Let me ask you something. What about the Department of Education? I want to get your opinion on that.
Are you talking about the Federal Department of
Yes.
Education?
Mm-hmm.
Are you asking a specific question?
Well, should we discontinue it and let it be run from the states?
That's an interesting question. I don't actually have an opinion about that right now.
Well, we feel like there's a lot of money wasted when we take tax dollars and send it to the feds, and then they send it back down. That there's a lot of money wasted if we just had it here to deal with. That we could probably do more with it.
Can I ask a question? Because I actually think
Sure.
she would be a really good person to ask this. How did you feel about the recent statements that came out, some of it on tape, some of it Bill Clinton, about the Bernie Sanders supporters? Because as I remember it, you were a Bernie supporter, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
What was your take on that?
What did he say?
Well, Hillary said that there was a recording from a fundraiser in February where she said all the Bernie Sanders supporters were basically, what did he say, living in their parents' basements. They were idealistic, and you had to sort of coddle that idealism.
Yeah.
And then Bill basically threw Bernie under the bus for voting for the crime bill in '94. I'm just asking, as a Bernie supporter, how that hit you.
I mean, I don't like people holding my presidential selections against me. Anytime you speak disparagingly about a voter and what they think is the best for their community and who they chose at the ballot box, I think, you're entering into some nasty territory. It's probably really none of your business who they voted for in the ballot box. I think Bernie Sanders was a great candidate for president. I'm really glad that we still have a Bernie Sanders in the Senate. I think he's a great guy. I don't live in my parents' basement. I don't play video games. I pay taxes and I'm raising my kids. And, people are going to say what they want, but.
Let me ask you something. This presidential election's been a lot of slander, a lot of things being said that didn't focus anything on the problems that America has. We've had debates. We're not talking about the economy, the military, Obamacare, police, very much, terrorism. We're just not talking about the things that we're faced with every day now. And do you think there's a reason that we're not talking about it?
It doesn't make for very entertaining television.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, I wish we had more time.
Me too.
But we're out of time, and we're already running into the. Yeah, but I want to play one thing for you real quick before we leave, and we'll talk about it next week.
Insurance company, and they're getting whacked. So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up